Nate Schwartz, Kristen Yoakum. Really nice to have a lot of IAF organizers on the call, CPA board members, people coming to us from all different regions in the country. We love it. We love that you're here. We love that you're on time. And yes, without further ado, we are going to go ahead and kick off CPA's annual 2021 meeting. Yay! It is our sincere hope to be in person next year, but we will always do whatever is safest for everyone. And in this way, we are all able to join together, all of the regions here. So really excited. I'm Amy Abbott, Co-Executive Director of CPA Co-op. And it is my pleasure to introduce Troy Watson, CPA's board president, and she's going to go ahead and officially kick us off here. Troy?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to CPA's Co-op's annual meeting. I am Troy Watson, as Amy said. I am the CPA board chair. My church, known as the Emory Fellowship, is a United Methodist church located in Washington, D.C. And we have been a member of the co-op since the beginning, and I am not embarrassed to say that we have come a very long way. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys and to celebrate our many accomplishments over the past year and to look into the future. Do me a favor and type your name, your organization, and where you're located into the chat room. We have plenty of folks here from the DC metropolitan area and many regions from across the country. So we want to see you. We want to know who you are and where you come from. The CPA is entering a new phase of growth. And today you'll hear a little bit about that. And we'll take part in dreaming about CPA's future and how we can go beyond purchasing for your institution. It's been a tumultuous year for many of us due to the pandemic, and I have to say thank you on behalf of the board to the CPA staff for the phenomenal, flexible, great work that they have done over the course of the past year, and the leadership of Amy Abbott and Boris Sigal as the executive directors. I gotta say, you guys have done a phenomenal, phenomenal job, and without the members and the hard work of the staff, we would not be where we are today. So thank you guys for a great year. Housekeeping, make sure you keep yourself on mute. And today, if you have any questions at any time throughout the sessions, just type it into the chat room and somebody from the staff will monitor and will be able to answer your questions. We have a packed agenda and we should be done by 4:30. Promptly at 4:30, and we will then go into our breakout rooms for Massachusetts, and the DC region. I am now going to pass the baton to one of our newest CPA members, and that's BA Carter.
Hi, everyone. I'm BA and one of the newest CPA staff members. I'm very excited to be here today and introduce everyone to Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nemhard. Dr. Gordon-Nemhard is a very well-known authority on cooperatives and was a 2016 inductee into the US Cooperative Hall of Fame. She is a political economist specializing in community economic development, solidarity economics, and community-based approaches to justice. She is the author of the book Collective Courage, A History of African-American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice. Currently, Dr. Gordon-Nemhard is a professor of community justice and social economic development at the John Jay College of the City University of New York and has taught at Howard University and the University of Maryland. Dr. Gordon-Nemhard is a scholar, an activist, and a proud grandmother of 4 grandchildren. We really appreciate having her here with us today to talk about cooperatives and using the power of cooperatives beyond purchasing. Quick note to attendees, again, post your questions into the chat and we'll make sure that Dr. Gordon is able to see them. Thank you and welcome to Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nemhard.
Thanks, BA. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. I'm very excited about what you all are accomplishing and that you wanted to hear from me. So I'm, see if I can do this right. Yes, can you see my screen, see my PowerPoint?
Perfect.
Okay, great, thanks. And I'm a New Yorker, even though my home base now has been DC for about 25 years, but I do talk fast. So please give me a little grace on that. So thanks again for having me. Thanks for all you're doing. I do want to acknowledge the original stewards of the land, wherever we are. I also want to acknowledge our ancestors and elders, and I'll name a couple of co-op ancestors: Ella Jo Baker, W.E.B. Du Bois, Fannie Lou Hamer, A. Philip Randolph, and there's many, many more. In fact, when I started doing my study of the history of African-American cooperatives, I found out that most of our, especially by the 20th century, most of our Black leaders had some foot or toe in the co-op movement as well as the civil rights movement. So it's an interesting sideline of what I learned. And then, just acknowledging all those who struggle against anti-Blackness and who use cooperatives for liberation. So I wanted to start out just to give you a broader view. Cooperatives are really part of what we now call the solidarity economy, which is an alternative grassroots people-centered economic framework. Basically, it's been used throughout history by most groups of people, but it was sort of rediscovered with the social forum movement of what was that, the 1980s and 90s. And many of us have been talking more and more about that this is the kind of economy we need, especially in the 21st century, kind of going back to all our roots. So what do we mean by solidarity economies? These are economic relationships and activities and structures that are grounded in solidarity, cooperation, caring, and environmental sustainability. So worrying about human beings and Mother Earth. Promoting social and economic democracy, equity in all dimensions: race, class, gender, sexual orientation, ableism, etc., non-hierarchical relationships, and anti-oppression relationships. And the other thing about looking at a solidarity economy framework is pluralistic and organic. So pluralistic meaning there's multiple forms, there's not just one model or one structure that's accepted. And organic, right, bubbling up from the bottom, coming out of our context, coming out of people's experiences. And so different forms and strategies in different contexts are all considered solidarity economy activities if they relate to all these values that we've been talking about. And it can be visible as well as invisible economic activity. And it's important to mention that because too often we really focus on what's visible. And we miss invisible caring work, invisible labor, community work, but the solidarity economy tries to encompass all of that. And so those of us even in the co-op movement, and in a minute I'll talk about what co-ops are, though I know you know those a little bit better. We really like to also talk about this value, caring, and support for human development that can be done through economics by using this notion of a solidarity, people-centered, value-centered economic activity and structures. And here, just quickly, so you get a sense of the interlocking solidarity systems, is to look at, right, an economy it goes from creation and production to exchange, use, and surplus allocation. And you can look at all the ways that solidarity economies encompass activity in all those different areas. So creation, community, land trust, land ownership, commons, understanding the notion of a commons, production would be worker co-ops, not-for-profit collective, self-employment, clan, and family-based production, producer cooperatives, and then go to exchange, and that's gifting. We consider gifting and barter to be exchange. It doesn't always have to be monetary, fair trade, and values-based exchange, sliding scale pricing, solidarity markets, as well as community currencies. Then use, right, and consumption. So that would be ethical purchasing, self-provisioning, housing co-ops, consumer co-ops, and then to surplus allocation. That's where finance comes in, savings, storage, as well as composting, recycling, all those kinds of things that are done together. So it gives you a broader sense. And you'll see co-ops are in the mix in all these stages of a solidarity economy. So then how do we think of cooperatives? I won't give you the official definition. I want to focus on the values right? And the way that co-ops support an ecological system of support and interlocking networks, so that you can see in my field, my specialty has been African-American cooperatives. And in a minute, I'll give you a quick examples of how these values and processes have been used by African Americans. So the self-help, self-responsibility values, democracy, solidarity, equality, and equity, honesty, openness, social responsibility, caring for others. If you look at the International Cooperative Alliance statement on cooperatives, that's actually what they say are the values of cooperatives. You see how they so nicely fit with the values and the purposes of solidarity economics. And then we also usually just focus on the 7 principles of cooperatives. But as I said, I love to look at the values, and those principles are how to sort of live these values. And so the 1 member, 1 vote, autonomy, education, cooperation among cooperatives, concern for community, democratic economic participation are all the principles of how we operate in cooperatives, especially informal incorporated cooperatives, but also even in the less formal, more solidarity cooperatives and collectives and things like that. And if you practice to put together economic systems which reflect all those things, then you end up with ecosystems of support and interlocking networks of support, so that we could think about what I sometimes call a solidarity cooperative commonwealth. So a commonwealth of cooperative and solidarity economic activities, so that every aspect of our lives, right, between housing, purchasing, banking, working, right, it could all be within at least solidarity economic relationships, if not actual co-op relationships. I wanted to put this up. Hopefully you've all seen it. It was done during 2012 UN Year of the Co-op by the NCBA. They polled all their co-ops. What are the, how does your co-op rock? And then they came up with sort of the 10 most general ways to explain what everybody said was so great about their co-op. So the democracy, right, bringing money to their communities, the economic and environmental, social justice aspects, the fact that they're not charities, they're real business entities. They do better in during hard times, more resilient, they're part of an international movement, et cetera. And so cooperatives also, I find it really important to mention, especially to groups of color, that all populations use co-ops. I found as I started to look, I was first looking very specifically at African-American co-ops, but then I also started to try to understand how all groups use cooperatives, and you really find out that in every era of human history, on every continent, by all populations, have used solidarity economics and cooperation and co-ops in particular. So there isn't really, you can't say it's just European or just white folks or anything like that. We really see it. In fact, it's pretty much the very first economic system that any human being has used. And we also forget that, right? We keep thinking it's new and that we're just trying to understand it now, but really it was the first system. It got usurped by other systems along the way, but it was the one we all used first. It's the one we always come back to, even when we have nothing else that we think we can contribute to an economy. We're always doing something with cooperation and solidarity among ourselves and our families and our communities. So that notion of the common good, a commonwealth, the commons, right, has been with us for years in all different cultures and civilizations. And so, yeah, I just put some other ways that indigenous groups, early African groups have all used some notion of solidarity and cooperative economics. I think I will go into the Black history more than the types, but I think you all know that the different types, you guys as a producer co-op, but there are consumer co-ops, worker co-ops, and this new model of multi-stakeholder where you can combine producers and workers, or producers and consumers, or workers and consumers. Sometimes they're called solidarity cooperatives. You can see why. It's kind of the newest way to think about doing solidarity cooperative systems. And so I wanted to just make sure you realized where you fit and all the different kinds of structures when I talk about this ecosystem and interlocking networks. I mean using all these different kinds of systems in every industry and in every part of our lives, if we can and when we can, and that it helps to enhance what we're doing and how we do better. And also, I think you all know that co-ops help to address market failure. So often if you look in places where the market has failed, like rural electricity, you see, especially in the United States, right, most of our rural electric system is a co-op system, because it wasn't very profitable for for-profit utilities to come in, but co-ops could handle how to electrify people who live far away. Affordable, healthy, and organic foods, right? The whole healthy food and organic food movement started with co-ops in the 60s, or at least the recent version of the healthy and organic food started then. Access to credit and banking services from early on. A lot of my research, that was one of the issues that African Americans dealt with from early on, not having access to credit or banking services and using credit exchanges, rotating savings and loan, and then eventually credit unions, which are financial cooperatives. And you get the idea. And also cooperatives help to overcome historic barriers to development. So where you have groups of people who have been left out of the markets and discriminated against the markets, they also use co-ops. The other thing that we know that we're learning more and more about co-ops is they have lower failure rates than other small businesses. So they last longer, and they also survive crises better and often develop during a crisis. So the flexibility, the ability to pivot, all that makes a big difference in longevity, survivability, and usefulness of the model. And the last thing in general I want to remind you all of, and I think you probably are seeing this as you're trying to run your co-op, is the components that are needed to be successful. So adequate resources and financing, participation, we don't always think of it, but the human energy and enthusiasm of members is really important, and keeping that up is really important, because that's one of the value added, one of the edges of a co-op, is that people-centered and value-centered piece, right? Solidarity and trust among members is also important, because it's very hard to make joint decisions and to work together, right? If you don't have trust and you don't have that sense of solidarity. So therefore, we need to be able to do conflict resolution, or some of us now talk about conflict transformation, right? You're not necessarily trying to resolve a conflict, but transform it into something that will help you get to a better decision and a better process. But that's all part of the solidarity and trust, and part of the how do you make democratic decisions effectively. Internal education and training, the strongest co-ops that I've studied had very strong education and training programs from orientation to exit, and making sure that we get all levels of training, right? Industry training as well as management training, and learning how to make decisions together. Getting the message out to others is important, and then the local control and cooperating with others. So what did I find in the work that I've done? This is a copy of my book, Collective Courage, where I was able to really trace informal as well as formal cooperation and solidarity economics from pretty much when Africans were brought to the shores of the US up through around 2013. And I found this long, strong, continuous, but very hidden history. Also, I just recently helped Esther West to do a study on current Latinx co-op. So if you're interested in that, there's that URL, and I can share this PowerPoint. I just wanted to give you one example of how all the stuff I just talked about comes up in some of the history of Black co-ops that I found, because I know I'm running out of time. 1930s and 40s, North Carolina, there were two Black independent educational institutions, one called Bricks Rural Life, which was a religious-based school, and Terrell County Training School. They're both independent Black schools. They both, unbeknownst to the others at first, started to practice cooperative economics, started teaching it not just to their students, but to the families, to the parents, helping the parents to start farmer co-ops and equipment co-ops, and then starting credit unions, buying clubs. They even did a health insurance co-op, both of them, both the schools. And they, slowly, as in the first couple of years, as they started doing this, they realized they were both doing it. So So the other thing that was so interesting, not just that they were creating these cooperative networks around this Black independent school in order to address all the issues facing the parents and the families in their neighborhoods, but also that they realized that they were doing parallel things. They joined together and created an Eastern North Carolina Association of Black Co-ops and Credit Unions. And then they decided to go statewide and created the North Carolina Council about 10 years later. And the really fascinating thing about the North Carolina Council, a statewide organization promoting the establishment of Black co-ops and credit unions, they were able to work with the state agricultural department, the white folks, and develop manuals and workshops, get that paid for by the state agricultural department, still focused on Black co-op development. And they were able to move from having 3 Black credit unions in 1936 to 98 in 1948. So just that education, right, that connection made a huge difference. And then 48 additional Black co-op enterprises get created out of this whole effort. So you can see how important, right, this solidarity, this ecosystem, this networking and education are. And so the accomplishments I found for Blacks using co-ops: pooling resources, providing quality goods and services that were accessible, as well as culturally and geographically sensitive and appropriate, saving costs, increasing income, so democratizing wealth, combating racial discrimination, increasing Black economic stability, self-sufficiency, group independence, saving and creating decent jobs, developing collective agency and collective action, and then developing leadership. And I could talk about any of those for hours, but I promised I would try to stay within 12 minutes. I think I went over a little bit, but hopefully I gave you a great overview and got you excited about all the ways that we can keep moving with the co-op movement.
And Dr. Jessica, we are so grateful for you, and we have some questions that have come up in the chat. So I'd love to read those to you and give you a chance to respond. Carl asked, are there recent successful models of housing cooperatives with federal funding assistance that have caught your eye through your research?
So my favorite Black-owned housing cooperative is the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community and Co-op in Washington, D.C. in Columbia Heights. It's not that new anymore. If you think about that, I guess they started in 1990s or something. They finally were able to move in like 2005. But what's exciting about what they did, because I think it's still a model, it's not too late. They were trying to address two major things, right? Affordable housing for activists, women of color, and to stem gentrification in Columbia Heights, right? To make sure there was sort of at least some kind of liberated zone where people could still afford to live, as gentrification was just skyrocketing in that area. And then, as I said, that it was also an intentional community because they wanted people who were doing similar things, being activists in the community, trying to make change, to be able to live together. And so they combined all that into a housing cooperative. These are actually not contiguous. So they have like 4 or 5 buildings with 3 or 4 apartments in each building, but all on the same block. And so it was an interesting way. It didn't have to be one whole office building. But what they were able to do was to get support in getting the land from the city and getting mortgages to buy the land and fix up all the apartments and establish their co-op. And then, as I said, connecting, having affordable housing with other kinds of lifestyle and things that they were doing. So that, to me, is one of the best examples of housing co-ops. There's also a lot of growth in student co-ops, student housing co-ops, which is also another way to help young people with limited means to afford to live near the campus that they go to school at, right? And again, to own or be part of a housing cooperative, learn how to live with other people and make decisions and pay your rent and all that kind of stuff. So there's a strong movement with student housing cooperatives. The NASCO, North American Students of Cooperation, run a training session and help student groups to actually buy the buildings, that kind of thing.
Great, and we had a question come in from Daryl Clay from our DC Charter School Network that says, curious to hear your thoughts about the future of education co-ops for young learners, especially given the rise of pods and homeschooling and unraveling of traditional schooling during COVID.
Right. So I've been arguing, oh, and sorry, there was one other housing co-op project that I think is really great. It's called UHAB out of New York City. I can't remember what the UHAB stands for, but they actually help people either buy their building and convert it to a co-op, or help people to buy abandoned buildings, rehab them themselves and turn it into a housing co-op. And so they teach them how to do as much of the construction as possible, as well as how to get access to the land, and then how to convert to a housing co-op, and then how to run their own housing co-op. So that's another really important program. It's also not new, but it continues to do new and bigger things. In terms of youth, yeah, I'm an educator. You know, I consider myself a co-op educator. I actually have a master's degree in elementary education. And I have a father who is a professor of education. So, and I found from my research how important education was. One of the things I realized after I was putting the book together was that pretty much every Black co-op that I had enough information about to know how they started with a study group, people coming together and studying, one, their neighborhood problems, and then two, cooperative economics, because they realized that a co-op would be a good way to address their neighborhood problem. And so then they realized they needed to learn together how to do a co-op. So that learning together, both informal and formal, is really important, especially to cooperatives, especially because cooperatives require so much of that joint decision-making, collective ideas about finance, right? Which we usually are taught is kind of supposed to be private. So you can't get around needing to education. And as I said earlier, the strongest co-ops have the best education program. So then what do we do in terms of preparing people to be good cooperators? I've been arguing that we need to start with kindergarten, right? I'm one of those people who, if you actually look at kindergarten, I believe that's where they actually start to take away our notions of cooperation and joint learning, right? If you think about what it means to graduate from kindergarten, right? What are they looking for? They're looking for you to be socialized. What does socialized mean? That you know how to sit at your desk, keep your hands to yourself, and regurgitate what the teacher tells you. Well, that's not cooperation. In fact, by first grade, cooperation in education is cheating, right? So not only do we sort of beat it out of the kindergartners, we actually punish them by first grade if they, right? In kindergarten, it's okay to cooperate while you play, but when you get to the academics, no. By first grade, you're actually punished if you talk to other people. And right, so that's the first thing we have to do. We got to change that. And also the newest pedagogy is saying that people learn better in groups and when they teach each other, right? And when everyone sees themselves as both a learner and a teacher, and we can start that even in kindergarten. So we even know the better pedagogy is about cooperative learning and learning together, sharing ideas, right? So we've got to be able to bring that back, bring it into the schools, and make sure that our children learn how to learn from each other and make decisions with each other, because that's what, if we want more people to be able to do co-ops, that's what we have to do. The other thing that I found really exciting is youth co-ops, especially middle school and high school, getting them to actually start their own co-ops, whether it's in school setting or after school or with a nonprofit. There's been fascinating ways that young people have tried to address community problems by starting co-ops that also help address their income, bring them income, teach them, help to teach them math and writing skills, help them get through school. And then once you have them doing their own co-ops, their parents and stuff get involved, right? Because everyone gets involved with what their children are doing. So it's another way to get, right, to keep things going. And of course, then they grow up, they know how to be in a co-op already. You don't have to start from scratch because they've already been running their own co-ops. And sorry, I know I'm going on.
No, we're
talking too long.
No, we are so thrilled to hear from you. And I know that we always run into this. We should have allowed more time. That's a learning. We're trying to pack so many stories in today, but we're so appreciative. And we actually did have a question from Pastor Ward in Baltimore. And I know that she's, very interested to hear from you about, potentially a grocery store co-op there. So we might connect you later if that's okay. And we would
Sure.
love to hear a closing word and sentiment from you.
Yeah, so thanks so much. It's such a pleasure to talk to you guys and to see people who are doing this work. I didn't really talk about how do we do education and stuff during COVID. And so I guess my closing word will be, even with social distancing or physical distancing, we don't have to be socially distant. And now is a great time to do study groups, even if it has to be online, right? To learn more together, to talk more about these things, to get the word out, right? But also, there's lots of fascinating things going on with how, even during COVID, people can create, learning at home projects and, do it either by Zoom or with the small pods of people, right? And so we're already seeing with, kind of mutual aid stuff happening where people are realizing physical distance doesn't have to mean social distance. And we can still do things cooperatively. We can still operate with that solidarity economy, right? Between barter and gifting. We're still doing all that, even though we have to be physically isolated from each other. And so I think recognizing that humanness, right? That there is an economic system that recognizes and helps us perpetuate our humanness, I think is the important thing to see, and that we can keep doing this no matter what the conditions, because we are human beings, we're social beings. And this is how we should and can relate to each other, even economically.
Thank you so much. We are so appreciative for you. And I've had a couple people send me messages that they would like to be connected to you. So we will go ahead and make those connections.
That would be fine. I look forward to it. Have a great rest of your annual meeting. I can listen for about 10 more minutes and then I've got to go teach a class.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Great, thanks so much. So the next portion of our meeting will be some breakout rooms, and it's brought to you by one of our sponsors, one of our preferred vendors, Capital Document Solutions, who's been a preferred vendor for over 5 years, serving institutions like Friendship Public Charter School, DC Scholars, and St. Margaret's Episcopal Church. As an owner-operated business with over 30 years of experience, Orlando and the CDS team have the expertise to do each job right and the operational flexibility to serve each customer based on individual needs. We're really glad to continue to call Capital Document Solutions a CPA preferred copier vendor and a longtime partner of CPA Co-op. So now we're going to break into some small groups for about 5-ish minutes, maybe a little longer if we can squeeze it in, just to talk about what brings you to our annual meeting this year. What's your connection to CPA? Why are you interested in the co-op? So there will be a CPA staff or board member in your room. So if you have questions, you can ask them, or you can pop back here into the main room, and we're happy to, try to get you the answer you need. So with that, we'll have about 7-ish minutes in our breakouts to do a little bit of socialization from a distant place. So have fun.
It would be my pleasure, everyone. Well, I can tell you one thing. If this isn't a great testament, you all are witnessing how CPA pivots in order to position itself to best serve its members. This is a great, great demonstration of that. When the pandemic hit, there was no one that was an expert in PPE for the average person, for member organizations and things of that nature. And CPA quickly recognized our individual challenges with procuring these items. And they were able to mobilize and assist us through that storm, and are still assisting us in that way. And so I know that the part of the video that got cut off was me talking about expansion, but I wanted to come, and just share that from the smallest thing, okay, down to a greater scale of up to a greater scale of just being able to support other communities on a greater scale. It's a wonderful thing, and I really, really enjoy the many hats I wear as I interface with the co-op. So as a member organization, the way that I benefit from co-op efforts and activities and energies. And then as a member of the board, I'm really excited about the cutting edge things that we're doing to be able to work better, work smarter, and touch other communities.
Thank you, Anjay. Sorry about your video.
It's all right.
This next section is brought to you by Sovereign Insurance Group, which is a proud partner of the Community Purchasing Alliance. We've been working with Stephanie and Sovereign now for a few years, but Sovereign provides a boutique kind of insurance experience that really focuses on our churches, our nonprofits, our charter schools. And they have access to a really broad range of different insurance carriers. In this past year, we've been able to work with Stephanie and Sovereign and help a number of our members already save between 15 and 25%. And so we're really excited about 2022, where we're going to be launching our group program, where we're hoping to buy aggregate insurance, share resources, and really leverage the strength of the group. And with that, I will kick it off to Boris.
Thanks, Alex. Boris Segal here. I'm the co-executive director at CPA, helping lead our work outside of the DC region. So over the last year or so, we've partnered with community organizers in Massachusetts, in Connecticut, in Illinois, and in Ohio to facilitate group purchasing for over 150 organizations in a number of purchasing areas. So along the way, we're actually asking two big questions. How can CPA be a helpful partner to support the growth of new purchasing cooperatives, similar to the one we've successfully seen in DC? And also, how can we build a network of cooperatives that can act more powerfully together? And it's actually this last question that has us dreaming pretty big. How do we grow our economic power to get better prices, services, and terms? How do we bring a bigger fight to industries that are taking advantage of our community institutions all across the country? How are we finding deeper ways to support businesses that are better for our community interests? And then how do we demonstrate a cooperative economy that can grow with scale? So to learn a little bit more, let's hear a little bit from our partners on the ground actually doing this work and trying to make new co-ops a reality.
My name is Nancy Chisholm. I am currently a church administrator in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, and also on the steering committee in the newly formed Power Up Purchasing Cooperative through a partnership with the Cleveland Purchasing Alliance, the Cleveland IAF affiliate of the GCC, and Jonathan Welly of the local nonprofit Cleveland Owns. The steering committee has been meeting this year since January, getting bylaws and a business plan formulated, so we're ready to roll at the end of the year with a full branding portfolio. Power Up has completed 2 purchases, one in electric and one waste hauling. Waste hauling saved the participants more than 50% of what they were paying, and the electrical buy, which was about $300,000, saved them just under 15% of what they were paying before. The part of the evolving story of Power Up is that we use collective spending power to negotiate better pricing and terms and have a commitment to build economic power through cooperation in Greater Cleveland.
My name is Barbara Burke, and I'm a member of the steering team for CPA Massachusetts and a strategy team member for the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, the local founding partner. In this year alone, CPA-MA has executed 30 contracts in 3 areas: electricity, natural gas, and waste hauling, representing about $750,000 of coordinated purchasing power. In the coming year, we will build ownership and momentum towards forming a cooperative governance structure. Our institutions are motivated by 4 goals: strengthening the financial resilience of our community organizations, building solidarity across our institutions, putting our budgets to work for racial justice, and organizing our economic power alongside our people power to build the world as it should be. Through our partnerships with organizations advancing racial equity, we found that CPA-MA distinguished itself by developing the demand side for purchasing from Black and Brown-owned businesses. We believe the faith and nonprofit sectors can lead in this area, and we're enthusiastic about our potential to make a difference for our members and for Greater Boston. In this work, we are inspired and strengthened by the opportunity to connect, contract, and collaborate with the broader CPA community.
This is Elizabeth Moriarty in Berkeley, California, where I'm studying to be an Episcopal priest. In spring 2020, I worked with CPA and Illinois IF to pull off our first successful group purchase of electricity with 12 institutions committing to contracts, including the Lawndale Christian Development Corporation. How do we go beyond purchasing from the roughly $3,000 saved annually on LCDC's electric bills to the over $3 billion in equity plundered from Black families in the Lawndale neighborhood of Chicago? LCDC is a lead institution in the United Power organizing campaign to build 1,000 houses for working families on city-owned vacant lots. LCDC Co-op was founded to incubate worker-owned businesses in Lawndale. One part of CPA's work in Illinois will be to drive spending for member institutions to businesses in Lawndale. Whitney, take it from here.
I don't want anyone to feel like LCDC Co-op is something that is being done for the community or to the community. It is exactly and wholly and intentionally something that's being done with the community and in the community. What we need is access to resources, access to capital, access to proper policy making to actualize the brilliance that's already here. It's a travesty. North Lawndale has about 500 businesses, and a community of this size should be supported by 10 times that number of businesses. Co-ops are micro democracies. It is the truest form of democratized power. We're relearning how to get away from hierarchies and how to get away from thinking that there has to ultimately be somebody, one person in charge. We've been foiled time and time again by having a leader that can be pointed to and taken out. But it's truly the diffused sense of power that will give us our greatest strength. The key to the success of all of this is going to lie in our ability to come together, begin to move collectively, begin to learn the value and the process of group decision-making. This work requires all of us. It requires all of us to feel that sense of obligation, belonging, ownership, and entitlement to the success that we can have.
Micro democracies, I love that.
Yes, thank you all so much to the great leaders building co-ops in regions across the country. Incredibly exciting to see what's happening. Want to direct your attention to the chat and just feel free to answer this question. Where would you like to see cooperative purchasing happening? And give us your thoughts on where you'd like to see more co-ops sprouting across the country. And would like to just say that the next section of our annual meeting is sponsored by Advanced Building Services. They have been a preferred vendor for CPA for many years now, over 4 years, and serve over 20 of our organizations for their HVAC maintenance and equipment replacement needs. They're a locally owned company and have been in business for over 25 years. ABSI was founded with a goal to serve churches, schools, and other nonprofit organizations that often don't get the attention they need from larger contractors. They pride themselves on being a valued and trusted partner in helping organizations get the most out of their HVAC system while providing competitive pricing and high quality service for projects large and small. We are grateful as always for the many years of support and help that ABSI has provided to our members and their partnership for their support today.
So with that, I want to announce the most Cooperative Awards. So every year we like to recognize those CPA members who have gone above and beyond to help the co-op and their fellow members. And a shout out to our inaugural award winner, Kristen, who's I saw with us on the call, as well as last year's recipients, Ben, Dom, and Beth, who I also see on the call. This year, we wanted to highlight those individuals who help us go beyond purchasing. So the first most cooperative award goes to Ian. We're delighted to honor you because of the way you have helped fellow congregations secure access to PPP funding at a crucial time when we were all feeling the uncertainty from the start of COVID. You read every letter of that PPP law and then turned it into something that our other members could use and benefit from. So thank you.
Thank you.
Heather, you left a CPA member school and brought the co-op with you to a new school. You constantly share and provide resources so that our other charter schools might learn from the excellent materials and processes you have created. Whenever we have a compliance question or need clarification on some new school regulation, you're our go-to person. Thank you. Might have skipped ahead a couple slides. Give me 1 second. So our next 2 awards go to individuals from our expansion regions. These individuals have helped shepherd the co-op building endeavors in Illinois and Massachusetts. They've participated in multiple group purchases, always bringing the right questions that help us reach successful purchases in new regions. They've helped us recruit, expanding to find new participants. With that, I'd like to honor Lori in Illinois. Thank you, Lori. And Tricia in Massachusetts. Thank you, Tricia. Our next 3 awards are going to individuals from our Strengthening Congregations peer group. These 3 individuals meet every month with CPA Board President Troy Watson and CPA staff to help design and curate the congregation's peer group. They suggest new topics for the most pressing needs of our congregation members, and they use their own connections to invite engaging speakers. So with that, I want to honor Cindy. Cindy, thank you so much. Teresa, thank you, Teresa. And Gowan, thank you so much, Gowan. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Juan to talk about PPE.
And I'm going to jump in really quickly just to say, you all, we endeavor to start meetings on time, end on time. We acknowledge that we are going to need about an additional 10 minutes here. We're going to steal that from the regional breakouts. So we hope you'll stick with us for an additional 9 minutes.
Yes, thank you everyone for your patience. It's great to see everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Juan Hidalgo. I'm a program director for CPA, managing our PPE and COVID response supplies program. And so the story of our PPE program, as you may recall, begins in March of 2020, when the pandemic was ramping up, and we reached a point where even the largest and some of the most affluent institutions in our country were struggling to find basic supplies. And so it was obvious we were not only in a global health crisis, but also a global supply chain crisis. We started by reaching out to healthcare centers, hospitals, meeting vendors, learning about the landscape of these complex medical supplies. And here we realized it wasn't just the large providers who were struggling, but also our own network of institutions. And so we stepped in. Our ordering process started very basic and has evolved into an e-commerce platform that's powered by one of our top vendors, FreshPrint. Here we've been able to streamline process and welcome a large host of Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned vendors with new and very different product offerings. One such vendor and that I want to highlight is Smith Golden Rule, a Black-owned, led, and operated manufacturer of hand sanitizers, and they're based in the DC metro area. They have a very strong environmental and racial justice focus because they produce their hand sanitizer mainly out of sugarcane, which, as you may know, is a crop that has a long and very painful history with descendants of African slaves across the Americas. By reclaiming sugar, Smith Golden Rule intends to use it as a source of Black wealth and not Black oppression. Together, we've been able to support more than 400 institutions with more than $1.7 million of PPE spend. And I say together because with each purchase your institution ever made, that helps secure supplies and good pricing for everyone else, especially for smaller institutions. So to acknowledge your contribution, I invite you to type in the chat, what did you purchase through CPA's PPE program? And as those responses roll in, we'll wrap up this section and we'll hear from one of our member institutions who has purchased through our PPE program, Daryl Clay from Berea Public Charter School. Thank you very much.
Want to give a huge shout out to Juan and the amazing CPA PPE team. You all have been so incredibly helpful as a partner to us this school year. And it's not an overstatement to say that it really would have been difficult to do what we have needed to do around purchasing COVID PPE supplies without you. So thank you for all of the tangible things like gloves and masks, COVID testing kits, disinfectant sprays, disinfectant wipes. In fact, there's some behind me here that we've gotten from you all, so thanks for that. But also thank you for the intangible things like, excellent customer service, for always having a can-do spirit, and just the overall positive working relationship that we've developed with you during these few months. So again, can't thank you enough. We'll continue to use CPA as the year continues, but just want to show our gratitude and appreciation.
Thanks, Juan, and thanks, Daryl. And thanks to all of you. Our next purchasing round is October 20th through 29th. So if you need any of the supplies you mentioned in the chat, you know where to find them. Our last section of the meeting here, we just wanted to mention one of CPA's longest standing partnerships, PMM Companies, who delivers high quality janitorial and facility maintenance services to customers in a wide variety of markets. They believe superb management is required for the highest level of service and quality. With their client in mind, PMM Companies goes above and beyond to provide an elite level of service. Here at CPA, we know we can rely on PMM as a trusted resource on things from client questions to interpreting safety guidelines. And we're proud to work with PMM as one of our preferred janitorial and facilities management vendors.
Okay, everyone. We want to acknowledge and extend our sincere thanks to CPA's board of directors, all of their lovely pictures here on the screen, led by our fearless board president, Troy Watson. During a season of change and transformation, as our founding executive director, Felipe Witchker, transitioned out of the organization, where he is continuing to build cooperatives and organizing the capital to fund those cooperatives, we're so excited to see how Felipe continues to elevate the broader cooperative movement. And a special thanks to Anjay Brown for leading the organizational task force that examined and made recommendations for the organizational structure and development at CPA. To all of our board members, we appreciate you, your time, your energy that goes to building CPA from one staff person in 2016 to 10 full-time staff in 2021. You have overseen this immense growth, change, and success. Thank you.
And just a quick word to thank our very incredibly supportive partners at O'Melveny & Myers Law Firm. If you like your contracts at CPA, O'Melveny has helped us review many of them and make sure we get the best terms year after year. So thank you for their unending support.
Okay, a special again, thanks to all of our sponsors. Again, we hope to be in person next year. Please stay in the Zoom room for the DC region. If you're from a region other than Massachusetts, we invite you to join us. We do have some business that we have to conduct for the annual meeting and vote for our slate of board members. So yes, there is the website there for the Massachusetts breakout, and DC region, we will start our breakout in just a minute here.
Have a great breakout room, everybody in Massachusetts. Otherwise, hope everybody can stay here. We'll start in a couple seconds.
Okay, we're gonna roll. Keep this party going. We're just gonna roll right into our regional breakout here. And the first thing that we
How do I get to the mass breakout?
oh,
Yeah, same question.
The link.
Where's the link?
Chat.
Where's the link?
It's in the chat. I'll send it to you right now.
Okay, thanks.
okay, perfect. He's like, before I get stuck in DC. All right, everyone. Well, you know, thank you
Not
again.
coming up. Oh, there it is.
There
Thank
it
you.
is.
Thank you,
Thank
Felipe.
you.
Okay, speaking of Felipe, Felipe, we have part of your gift that we would like to share with you now. And so take it away.
Oh,
I don't hear.
Let me try that again.
The 3 words that I would use to describe Felipe. How would I describe Felipe?
I actually have 4 words to describe Felipe.
3 words can never be enough to describe Felipe.
3 words I would use to describe Felipe are energy, energy, and energy.
Energetic.
Energetic. His energy just feeds everybody so that they can go to the next level.
Tireless.
Unstoppable, inspired, and sparkling.
He's inspirational.
Inspiring.
Passionate.
Passionate. He's extremely passionate. Passionate about the work that you do, and you bring that out in others.
People-oriented and positive.
And he is a connector.
Connector.
When I think of Felipe, I think about connection.
Definitely a builder.
A builder.
Admirable.
Creative.
Visionary.
An unwavering belief in genuine human connection.
You know, the commitment he brings to the space, the passion he brings to it, it's so authentic and so special.
Thank you for inspiring me to be a social justice leader, along with my day-to-day responsibilities running a busy temple. And especially, thanks for being our founding executive director. Your legacy will continue to motivate all of us to expand CPA's great work.
He's relentless. If Felipe has an idea that can benefit 1 person or 1 million people, he will see it through to fruition. And he's like a dog with a bone, and he will not let go. The thing I love about him the most is that he's willing. Felipe is willing to learn, to grow, and admit his mistakes and become a better person as a result of them. I've watched him grow over the past 10 years, actually. And it's been wonderful to know and love this man.
A normal conversation with Felipe is like a journey to a dream of what could be in the co-op world. There's no just, hi, Felipe, how are you doing? It's, hi, how are you doing? I see where your skill sets could fit in the greater scheme of our, national co-op journey. And I leave every conversation I have with Felipe feeling energized, about the co-op space, where it could go, and just so excited that he is a part of that. So Felipe, thank you so much for just always staying true to yourself, for being the builder, being the connector, being that energy in this space. And I wish you all the best.
To Felipe, the co-op wasn't just a set of services to use, but an intentional relationship that he cared about. He was relentless in maintaining that connection and looking for more ways to connect and work together. That's an ethos that has guided Felipe's work, and it's embedded in the DNA of CPA. And I know it's something that's going to carry him to meaningful and powerful work ahead. I can't wait to see how it manifests next.
Felipe, I will be forever grateful to you for introducing me to the co-op and later hiring me at CPA. I will work to ensure that the Felipe spirit remains in CPA's DNA.
You guys know me so well. This is very touching. Really can't thank you enough for pulling this together. And Troy, vivid imagery of the dog and the bone still sticks with me. So I have to laugh that I think many of you have been drug along many of the side adventures that I have, pursued in this, wonderful container. Some of you begrudgingly or unhelpfully helping me bring me back to the core and the center. And it's taught me so much about myself. It's taught me so much about community. It's taught me so much about business and the world we have and the world as it is, but also the world as it should be. And like the power we have collectively to create that better world. So it's really touching to come back and get a little glimpse of where CPA is today. And I think the vision you guys cast by your presence of this co-op for the future. So so grateful.
And Felipe, we do have another special gift on its way for you. It is a North Face jacket with the CPA logo on it, so you can carry us always, wherever you go.
I can't wait. I can't wait to keep always being a promoter of the CPA kind of visual and brand and purpose in the world. And I think the connection of organizing and justice and community power building that our co-op represents is something I will, always steward, and hopefully donning this jacket, tell the story of CPA far and wide.
Aw, yeah. CPA will literally be on your heart. Felipe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so everyone, we're just thrilled to introduce you to some new faces here at CPA. We mentioned, during the main meeting that we had one staff person at the beginning of 2016, and now, as you can see, all of these lovely faces, there are 10 full-time staff. BA and Esther are the two newest colleagues to join us. And, with the work that we're surfacing in the DC region, we realize that there's more programs for us to dive into. We can go both wider and deeper in our current program areas. And so we, are so thankful we're making this enormous investment in our growth as we are expanding to new regions, but also to continue serving our member owners here in the DC region. Oh, and they will be doing an introduction of themselves at our next board meeting.
So as we learned from Dr. Nemhard earlier, that co-ops are businesses, but they're a little bit differently. And so CPA as a co-op operates as a business, but a little bit different than a traditional business. And so what does that mean for us? First, our co-op is 100% owned by our member institutions. A lot of people here on the screen today are member owners. And our board of directors is composed exclusively of our members. And so we're directly accountable to the organizations that purchase with us. A small portion of each contract, about 4 or 5%, is used to fund the work of CPA. That includes running our more than a dozen purchasing areas and investing and growing our cooperative power. And at the end of the year, if we have any profits realized, those are returned all back to our members. And to date, CPA has actually allocated more than $125,000 in profits back to our community institutions. So how's our co-op doing financially right now? The overwhelming reality has been, over the last 2 years, has been an incredible challenge for the institutions that we've been working with. And CPA, through the guidance of our board, we made an intentional decision to invest in our ability to support our members in this difficult stretch. That means more peer groups, more purchasing areas, more one-on-one contract support, and more connections to peer institutions across multiple regions. And so in 2020, we actually grew in a lot of different ways, but we didn't escape financially unscathed. With facilities largely shuttered, we saw service levels on our existing contracts drop more than 60% in some cases. So despite actually growing in participants, contracts, and purchasing areas, our overall revenue through the co-op actually dropped about 10% compared to 2019. And so with decreasing revenues and increased expenditures, we actually sustained a modest overall loss in 2020 of about $45,000. But the good news is that the hard work in 2020 is making 2021 poised to be our strongest ever as a co-op. We're on pace for well over $20 million in spending to go through our co-op. in more than a dozen purchasing areas. We expect more than $1 million in rebate revenue to support our operations and then to return back to profitability. And we expect our minority-owned business participation to grow considerably with new preferred vendors in most of our purchasing areas. The co-op is making investments right now to support and expand our purchasing offerings, to expand our administrative capacity to manage a growing co-op, and our ability to support more purchasing happening in more places. At CPA, we believe there's strength in numbers, and we're excited to see what we can accomplish together in the years ahead with even more strength.
Okay, so I think that we are going to stay as one big group, we've decided, instead of doing a breakout room. And I think, we're curious to hear from people. You can put it in the chat, you can come off mute and tell us how you imagine going beyond purchasing with CPA in 2022. So if you already have an answer locked and loaded, ready to go, we'd love to hear from you.
I can kind of think that Ian summed it up when he says we're already gone beyond CPA. Ian, I'm gonna let you speak for yourself.
Oh, okay. I kind of think that CPA has already gone past purchasing. I think that's what motivated our organization to join from the get-go. But CPA co-op is a lot more than just purchasing, even if that's kind of its feature thing. I mean, it organizes peer groups so that leaders of organizations can discuss matters that come up that are of importance to them, that they need to discuss with other peers at other organizations, either in that metro area or elsewhere in the world, and disseminates information that all these members can find helpful and useful to their organizations and bring value to them, and just advocating for the best of all the members overall, not just in their purchasing, not only in we're going to spend less, but also we're going to do better.
Thanks, Ian. I think also as you're, ruminating over this, that think about the increased capacity that, we have with our two new program directors and their eagerness to dive in. So be thinking about, Daryl, did you want to lift up the equity and purchasing group that we've launched?
It sounds like I don't have any other choice, Amy.
Great.
No, just kidding. So yeah, as Amy mentioned, there's a small group of schools here in DC who have gotten together, and we've really been intentional about figuring out how to allocate our financial resources towards women and BIPOC-owned companies. And it's more than just saying we're going to do those things. We've actually started meeting and to set goals around what that's going to look like, not only during this school year, but in successive school years as well. Haven't quite figured out what that's going to look like, but we do have a solid group of kind of cohort members, and everyone seems to be excited and pumped up about making this a reality.
Awesome, Daryl. Thanks so much. Kristen, you put an interesting comment in the chat. Care to come off mute?
So in the days before COVID, Shelby was leading some work with some of our student leaders at E.L. Haynes around food purchases, meal purchases. And our students were really excited. And when they learned about CPA and what CPA was, they immediately were like, well, can't we have an us CPA? A way for them to connect about this one thing that is really important to them and they know is really important to their fellow students at other schools around DC. And they just reached out to me again this week to ask if that was something they could get back into. So I just want to put that out there. We have some students who are very interested in making me purchase better food. And they would like to work with anyone else who's interested in doing that.
Great, Kristen. Paul, can you say more about your comment?
Well, I know a number of the religious institutions have green teams, and maybe there's a connection that CPA can make between these various green teams to help them, expand their knowledge and do the peer-to-peer learning.
I second that idea.
Wonderful. Okay. The next question, and we're talking about, how we're going to go beyond purchasing and what work we're going to do together next year, but we also want to think about who is missing from our table. Who else needs to be in this room with us? So Margine, thank you for posting that question in the chat as we just think about what organizations do we want to invite, what other congregations or schools are we in relationship to. Martin has put a potential vendor for us to talk to. So this is just our chance to brainstorm here, and staff will capture it. And we will hunt those relationships down.
While we're thinking, can you remind us who's eligible to join? Who's eligible to be part of us and who's not?
Great, Ian, great question. So the co-op, as a social purpose cooperative, we support community organizing and we support shifting spend to minority-owned, woman-owned, and locally owned business. To that end, any organization that shares those same values are welcome to purchase through CPA. And, members are invited to join as members, essentially through an invitation from our board of directors. So primarily we work with nonprofits, although that's not exclusive. We do work with some for-profit entities that both share our mission and values, but also they bring economies of scale to our purchasing.
Amy, this is Martin. I think that the breakthrough with the child care centers in Maryland is really important. And if universal pre-K passes, there's going to be, and child care expansion passes, there's going to be a huge opportunity there. And then obviously the climate change, this is all very speculative. Who knows? It may go up in flames. But there seems to me a lot of opportunity for CPA to figure out how our institutions and prospective member institutions figure out how to take advantage of those public investments.
Yeah, that's a great point, Martin, especially because it was our first foray in doing a large scale procurement with the county, right? So it was Montgomery County with hundreds, of daycare centers. And so that's an interesting opportunity for us to show that they can benefit from our cooperative and group purchasing. So that's a great point, Martin. Okay, I'm going to move us to our board elections.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for just an awesome, incredible year. I would like to take a second to recognize some of our new members who have joined the co-op since our last annual meeting. That would be Breakthrough Montessori Public Charter School, Christ Church Georgetown, Creative Minds International Public Charter School, Georgetown Lutheran Church, Congregation Beth Ethel of Montgomery County, and Washington Latin Public Charter School. If you want to be recognized next year, join us, become a member owner. We look forward to seeing how we can go beyond purchasing with you in 2022. So again, I want to say thank you to Amy and Boris and the staff, and welcome to Esther and BA. We look forward to a great future with all of you all. And thank you to the board. Coming from me personally, you guys have been absolutely wonderful. And I could not have made it through this past year without your support. Thank you for holding me up.